I'm Becky, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm going to use rhubarb to make sugared rhubarb windows. We tend to use it mostly in crumbles, but it's quite good for other things too. So, sugared rhubarb windows, here we go. So I've got 2 sticks of rhubarb that are not terribly fat. I've washed them, but I need to trim the ends. That's the end that was joined onto the plant, and this is where the leaf was. So I'm going to take both of those off, and then I'm going to cut it into equal size lengths. Now I wouldn't normally buy rhubarb by length, but you need about 24 inches of rhubarb because you're going to make 12 pieces of cake which each have 2 bits of rhubarb on. So you need to cut this into 1 inch lengths, and I've got my ruler there to keep me kind of accurate. If it goes off a bit, it doesn't matter. But at the end of this, I should have 24 pieces of rhubarb. There we are. I might not need those bits. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. They go into sugar to soak, and I've got 40 grams of caster sugar. What happens is the juice comes out of the rhubarb, the sugar sticks to it, and so it actually sweetens the rhubarb a little bit whilst it's waiting. So it needs to have about 10 minutes sitting in that sugar. And we'll be using what's left of the sugar at the end, so don't worry about that. So now I'm going to get rid of my board and we'll get on to the next stage. So for this we're going to use a Swiss roll tin which measures approximately 33 by 20 centimetres, and it's about 2.5 centimetres or 1 inch deep. It's non-stick, but I'm going to line it simply because it does preserve the tin and it makes sure that you can lift your cake out. So to do that we need a pencil, and we mark the corners of the tin on the paper. And you kind of do it blind at the top there, but that's okay. Then take the tin off. Pair of scissors, cut from the corner to your pencil mark. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's just going to give you a guide. Now I'm going to turn it over because the lead is on that side and I don't want my cake sitting on that. So I've turned it over and I'm just going to fold those flaps in all the way round. So there's our liner. Now we're going to put it in the tin, but to make sure it doesn't move around too much, we're going to just put a little bit of oil or margarine in there, a couple of blobs, and that will stop the paper from moving around in the tin. So in it goes. Get your corners to just bend around. So now we're going to make the cake part, and for that you need to have 50 grams of softened margarine in the bowl, and to that we add 100 grams of caster sugar. It's quite a lot, and so it takes a little bit of mixing, and for this, whilst you can do it by hand, I would actually use the mixer because you'll see it takes a minute or 2 to get that creaming process to actually happen. So here we go, a little bit noisy. Mixer sounds as though it's not very happy. However, that's creamed and it's quite pale. If you want to go on a bit longer you can do that and get it a little bit paler, but I think that that's probably about right. The next thing we add is an egg, so crack it into a container just to make sure that there's no shell. No, we're fine. And to that we're going to add 1.5 tablespoons of milk. It's a different sort of recipe, this one, but it's actually rather nice. 1.5. And we'll give that a mix. And that can go in, and we beat that as well. That's quite smooth. It hasn't curdled, and that's because everything was at room temperature. If you put cold milk or cold egg into a creamed mixture, it will split and it will curdle. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. It just doesn't look very nice. So there we are. Now, to that we're going to add the flour, and for this we're using plain flour, and we're going to use baking powder. We're not turning it into self-raising, we're just giving it a little bit of lift. So we need half a teaspoon, which is really not much at all. My handy dandy spoons. So that's the baking powder. So perhaps we'll just give that a little stir before it goes in. There we are. And in it goes. Mix again. And that's the cakey part. Right, so all we do next is get this into our tin. And for this, I'm going to use a spatula. I'm going to just go round the bowl, and if there's any flour sitting there, just get it mixed in. And just put lumps of it down the middle of the tin. There's not a huge amount, it's not a great big cake, this one. But you'll see it's really rather interesting, it's quite different. Right, now the best thing for spreading at this stage really is a knife. So, just work it into the corners, all the way down the tin. Turn it as you go. Now it will spread itself out as it cooks, so don't worry if it's not perfectly even. But next of all, we're going to add the rhubarb. Now you can see that it's starting to get coated with sugar because the moisture is coming out of it. So what we've got to do is get it onto here in rows. And I'm going to do 4 rows that way and 6 this way. So here goes. Oh, that's all stuck together. That's what comes of not cutting it very well. There we are, 24 pieces of rhubarb. Now we've got all this sugar, so what we do next is just sprinkle it over the top. And that creates a lovely crust when you've cooked it, and it helps also to make the rhubarb more palatable because a lot of people don't like the sourness of rhubarb. That's why it's not as popular as a lot of other fruits. There we are. That's it, and it goes into the oven for 20 to 25 minutes. You're aiming for something that's risen and is a lovely golden brown, but not too brown, so you've got to judge it by your oven, but probably 25 minutes is about right. Now if you're not quite sure, take a skewer and go into a hole that's already there. So find a piece that's cracked and go into the thickest bit between the rhubarb pieces. And if it comes out clean, then you're done. That needs to just settle in the tin for 10 minutes or so that it's firm enough so that you can use the paper and lift it out and put it on the cooling tray. So take hold of the sides, just lift it and rest it onto your cooling tray. Let the sides come down, and then it needs to cool. When it's a little bit cooler, you can cut it into pieces, and you've got lovely guidelines. You probably want 2 pieces of rhubarb per slice, so I'm going later on to go down the middle like that, and then I shall go across each of those sections there. So it's going to give me 12 pieces. Well, there we are, sugared rhubarb windows. You can see where the sugar comes in because it's quite a crystallised topping, which is rather nice. So I hope you have a go at this and you enjoy it. So like it, share it, subscribe, and then if you check on the website, you'll find a recipe that you can print, www.becky-bakes.com. Bye for now.